Welcome back to Center Stage. Today, guys, we are deep diving, because I know we love deep dives, into one of the most uniquely moving, hilarious, and award-winning musicals to hit the stage in recent memory. Now, on paper, this sounds like an improbable premise for a musical. A 16-year-old girl with a rare genetic condition that ages her body at 4 times the normal rate, living in suburban New Jersey with a dysfunctional family, including a pregnant hypochondriac mother, an alcoholic father, and a check-forging ex-con aunt. Yet, in the hands of Pulitzer Prize winner David Lindsay Abaire and Tony Award-winning composer Jeanine Tesori, this quirky 2001 play was actually transformed into a sweeping Broadway classic that swept the entire 76th Tony Awards, including winning Best Musical. Now, when I said that we were coming back to Broadway, I surely meant it. This video is going to be a long one, so fair warning. Today, we're unpacking the entire journey of Kimberly Akimbo, from its intimate 199-seat off-Broadway premiere at Atlantic Theatre Company's Linda Gross Theatre, to its Broadway triumph at the Booth Theatre, its North American and regional tours, and its premiere across the entire globe. We'll also examine how the creative team navigated the incredible challenge of balancing dark comedy with existential heartbreak without ever falling into the pity trap. So put on your skates, grab a bag of cheese balls, and let's dive into the world of Kimberly Akimbo. Now, this is a 2021 musical with music by Jeanine Tesori and lyrics and book by Tony and Pulitzer Prize winning playwright David Lindsay Abaire. Now, based on David's 2001 play of the same name, the show tells the story of a lonely teenage girl, Kimberly Lavaco, who suffers from a condition similar to progeria that causes her to age rapidly, thereby giving her the appearance of an elderly woman. But aside from being forced to deal with family secrets, borderline personalities, and possible felony charges, Kim is determined to find happiness in a world where not even time is on her side. Now, the transformation of David Lindsay Abaire's 2001 play into a musical represents a profound masterclass in theatrical adaptation. By taking a quirky, dark off-Broadway play and reimagining it through music, Lindsay and composer Jeanine reframed how a story about mortality, youth, and isolation could actually resonate. When Kimberly Akimbo first premiered as a straight play in 2001, it was celebrated for its offbeat humor and eccentric characters. However, its emotional core, a teenage girl trapped in a body aging at 4 times the normal rate, remained largely verbal and narrative. But nearly 2 decades later, following their work on Shrek the Musical, Jeanine Tesori recognized that the play had a more deeper, untapped internal life. So Tesori observed that Kimberly's hidden emotional stakes, the terrifying ticking clock of her lifespan, and the unspoken yearning of her surrounding family possessed the exact emotional weight that requires singing. In musical theater, characters sing when words are no longer sufficient enough to contain their feelings. Kimberly's desire to live fully before her time runs out was the ultimate engine for the score. But rather than taking the 2001 play script and simply inserting musical numbers where emotional peaks occurred, Tesori and Abaire chose to rebuild the piece from the ground up, line by line. Converting a straight play into a libretto requires trimming prose to make room for musical architecture. The duo meticulously re-examined every single line, every single punctuation mark, and every single stage direction to ensure that the dialogue naturally leaned toward song. In a play, which we don't really talk about here, but in a play, characters express their flaws and neurosis through dialogue and action. In a musical, those motivations must translate into distinct musical styles and themes. So, rebuilding the text allowed the creators to give each character a unique musical vocabulary, from Aunt Deborah's manic, brassy heist energy to Kim's soaring, contemplative melodies. Now, in the original 2001 play, Kim's world was claustrophobic, centered almost entirely around her dysfunctional home life with her hypochondriac mother, alcoholic father, and a criminal aunt. The addition of show choir quartet of high school peers in the musical was a crucial structural decision. The teen ensemble provides an essential contrast. Seeing normal 16-year-olds worrying about teenage drama, school projects, and choir standing highlights the tragedy and the absurdity of Kim's physical reality. Casting an older adult actor to play Kim alongside young actors playing her peers created a very striking visual dynamic, because the ensemble grounds Kim in an authentic teenage social sphere while underscoring her physical isolation. But one of the greatest challenges of adapting a play into a musical is translating internal thoughts into theatrical action without ever relying on heavy exposition. Tesori's score acts as an emotional shortcut directly into the characters' psyches. So this duet between Kim and her classmate Seth, called Anagram, turns a simple word game into a metaphor for their entire life. Through puzzle-like harmonies and lyrical reordering of letters, the song reveals their shared intellectual intimacy, their felt connection, and their mutual desire to reshape the chaotic worlds they were given. But rather than having Kim explain her bucket list or her fears of dying young through a long monologue, the song Make a Wish gives her a direct, unfiltered outlet, because it articulates her hidden anxieties, her modest hopes for a normal life, and her desperate wish for a single, unburdened adventure. By dismantling the 2001 play and reconstructing it through music storytelling, the creative team actually elevated a premise into an empathetic, universally resonant portrait of time, choice, and connection. But writing a protagonist with a fatal aging condition carries a very clear inherent risk. The character can easily slide into inspiration porn, or basically a passive object of sympathy. David Lindsay Abaire and Jeanine Tesori deliberately subverted this trope by framing Kimberly not as a victim, but as the active engine of her own narrative. So Kim is not defined by her diagnosis. She is defined by her choices. She actively seeks out friendship with Seth. She negotiates her family chaotic dynamics, and ultimately she chooses to participate in Aunt Deborah's illegal scheme to secure the money that she needs for a much-needed road trip. But instead of portraying Kim as a saintly figure, the creators gave her sharp sarcasm, teenage impatience, and moral gray areas. She lies, she gets frustrated with her parents, and she breaks the law. So by giving Kim active flaws, agency, and a dry sense of humor, the musical demands that the audience respect her as a complex, fully realized teenager rather than pity her as a medical tragedy. Now, the theatrical central conceit of Kimberly Akimbo rests on a deliberate casting choice. Having an adult actor in her 50s or 60s play a 16-year-old girl whose body has aged at 4 times the normal rate, surrounded by actual teenager actors playing her high school peers. Well, an actor in the role, such as Victoria Clark on Broadway or Carolee Carmello on the national tour, must embody 2 opposing realities simultaneously. Physically and vocally, the actor must convey the subtle aches, the fatigue, and the posture of an older body, while seamlessly radiating the energetic body language, the vocal inflections, and the emotional vulnerability of a 16-year-old high school student. The score also requires a voice capable of blending mature, rich vocal power with the bright, tentative phrasing of adolescence discovery. If the performance leans too far forward, playing an older woman, the teenage innocence is lost. But if it leans too far into caricaturing a teenager, the reality of her physical condition collapses. Striking this precise balance allows the audience to instantly accept the illusion, making the visual image of a woman in her 60s sitting in a high school library feel utterly genuine. By deliberately leaving the specific clinical name, Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome, out of the dialogue altogether, David Abair removes the barrier of a medical label. So when a story explicitly centers around a named rare medical condition, audiences often default to viewing the protagonist through a clinical or diagnostic lens, basically treating them as a case study rather than an individual. So without a formal medical label explicitly dominating the script, the audience is forced to engage with Kim through her actions, her sense of humor, her friendships, and her relationships. Her condition becomes an undeniable part of her physical reality, but it's never framed as her primary identity. Refraining from technical jargon or clinical explanations keeps this narrative centered on Kim's emotional and social experiences. The condition shapes her daily life and timeline, but it never defines who she is, what she values, or what she wants out of the remaining time that she has. Now, historically, stage and screen narratives involve severe illness or disability actually fall into predictable tropes. The protagonist is either portrayed as a tragic victim whose sole purpose is to elicit tears, or as a sanctified inspiration meant to teach surrounding non-disabled characters lessons about appreciating life. Kimberly Akimbo rejects both of these models because Kim is not a passive bystander in her own story. She makes distinct choices. She navigates her own friendships. She engages in flawed decision-making and actively orchestrates her own escape from a toxic family environment. She drives the plot forward through her desire for independence rather than having events simply happen to her. So Kim is allowed to be messy, sarcastic, frustrated, and morally complex. She is never presented as an angelic figure who exits to uplift others. She's a teenage girl trying to experience a normal life, complete with first crushes, high school drama, and questionable choices, just on an accelerated timeline. Now, while Kim's specific physical circumstance is exceptionally rare, her condition functions theatrically as a hyper-amplified version of the universal human experience. So everyone lives on a finite timeline, but Kim's condition makes that reality inescapable and immediate. Her life expectancy of 16 years forces an acute awareness of time that echoes the existential reality that everyone faces. Time is brief, and waiting for the right moment to live, unfortunately, is a trap. The disconnect between Kim's internal self, a 16-year-old girl, and her physical exterior, a body aging at 4 times the normal rate, creates a very powerful metaphor for the universal human struggle with physical identity, with aging, and with visibility. It basically highlights how internal identity rarely matches external perception, fostering a deep, grounded empathy rather than sensationalizing a medical anomaly. But a reoccurring challenge in stories dealing with illness is that the diagnosis often becomes the sole driving force of the plot. Well, Kimberly demonstrates how a medical condition can serve as the foundational context of a protagonist world without ever flattening the story into a medical drama. While Kim's condition establishes an underlying ticking clock, the actual narrative momentum is actually driven by classic theatrical conflicts. So, falling in love for the first time, negotiating a chaotic and dysfunctional family, attempting to fit in at a high school, and orchestrating an absurd heist with her aunt. So, her accelerated aging is an ever present physical truth, but it is one factor among many that shape her choices. And by allowing teenage desires and external schemes to drive the action, the musical keeps the spotlight on Kim's lived experience rather than letting the illness swallow the entire story. Now, Kimberly Akimbo builds upon a modern musical theater lineage, joining works like Next to Normal, that deals with bipolar disorder and grief, and even Fun Home, that deals with family trauma and identity. But it rejects melodrama in favor of complex emotional realism. The production proves that heavy medical and psychological themes don't ever have to require a relentlessly somber tone. It utilizes comedy not as an escape from reality, but as an authentic human coping mechanism used to navigate absurdity and pain. So, by avoiding overly neat resolutions, heavy handed moralizing, or manipulative spectacle, the show reinforces a shift in commercial theater towards structural subtlety. It basically demonstrates to future creators that audiences welcome stories that balance darkness and warmth, honoring the messy truth of the human experience. Now, the world premiere of Kimberly Akimbo's musical adaptation found its initial home at Atlantic Theatre Company's flagship space, the Linda Gross Theatre, which is located in Chelsea, Manhattan. Now, housed in a repurposed 19th century church building, the venue itself features an intimate 199-seat auditorium. This physical proximity was crucial for the world premiere because it forced the audience into an immediate close-up relationship with the actors, making the delicate emotional beats, subtle physical choices of Victoria Clark, and acoustic nuances of Janine Tesori's score register with profound immediacy. The production began preview performances on November 6th of 2021 and officially opened on December 8th of that same year. Now, originally scheduled for a limited run, intense audience demand and rave word of mouth led to extensions through late January of 2022, proving that an offbeat, bittersweet musical could actually capture mainstream attention even amidst post-pandemic theatrical uncertainty. And it's worth noting that when the show opened, it earned near unanimous rave reviews from major critics who hailed it as a modern masterpiece of offbeat storytelling and emotional depth. The off-Broadway run dominated the 2021-2022 Theater Awards season, sweeping every single major off-Broadway honor for new musicals. At the Lucille Lortel Awards, it won Outstanding Musical, along with acting honors for Victoria Clark and Bonnie Milligan. At the Outer Critics Circle Awards, it was named Outstanding New Off-Broadway Musical. And presented at the Drama Desk Awards, well, it won Outstanding Musical, alongside honors for book, music, and direction by Jessica Stone, as well as performance. The overwhelming critical consensus sold-out run at the Linda Gross Theatre made a commercial Broadway transfer inevitable, setting up one of the most successful off-Broadway to Broadway journeys of the decade. Now, commercial transfers often substitute star name actors for lead roles to sell tickets. Recognizing that the magic of off-Broadway production lay in the rare chemistry of its ensemble, producer David Stone made the decision to transfer the entire primary company intact including lead Victoria Clark, breakout star Bonnie Milligan, and the high school newcomers like Justin Cooley directly to Broadway's Booth Theater in October of 2022. Now, following its sold-out world premiere at Atlantic Theatre Company's Linda Gross Theatre, Kimberly Akimbo did transfer to Broadway in the fall of 2022, starting previews on October 12th and officially opening on November 10th. Now, choosing the Booth Theater was a very strategic masterstroke by lead producer David Stone. At 780 seats, the Booth is one of Broadway's smallest and most intimate playhouses. So rather than placing the musical in a large 1,500-seat house that might have swallowed up its subtle acting choices, quiet humor, and acoustic score, the Booth preserved the close-up chamber musical feel of the off-Broadway production, while providing the visibility of a commercial Broadway stage. Now, in commercial theater, producers often recast off-Broadway productions with high-profile celebrities in order to guarantee box office sales. Well, for Kimberly Akimbo, the producers took the rare step of transferring the entire original primary company intact. This decision allowed the production to retain the rare, effortless chemistry and ensemble timing built during the original 199-seat run. Now, upon opening at the Booth Theater, mainstream critics reaffirmed their off-Broadway raves. The show was widely lauded for its ability to navigate heartbreak and absurd comedy without losing its delicate emotional core, with particular praise aimed at Victoria Clark's transcendent performance and Janine Tesori and David Lindsay Abair's score. Now, unlike massive blockbuster spectacles or jukebox musicals, Kimberly Akimbo was a very quiet, character-driven story that required audiences to trust its unconventional premise. The lead producers, led by David Stone, who previously guided Wicked and Next to Normal, designed a marketing strategy centered on grassroots word of mouth. So instead of relying purely on flash, they let audiences' reactions, critical acclaim, and the viral cast performances build a steady momentum throughout the winter and spring of the 2022-2023 season. Now, the grassroots strategy culminated on June 11th, 2023 at the 76th Annual Tony Awards, where Kimberly Akimbo emerged as the most decorated musical of the Broadway season. It took home 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, sweeping the night's top honors. The show's triumph at the Tony Awards validated the commercial viability of original human-scale musicals on Broadway, cementing its run at the Booth Theater as a high watermark for modern American theater. Now, following the conclusion of its Tony Award-winning Broadway run at the Booth Theater in April of 2024, Kimberly Akimbo transitioned into a new major national production, bringing its intimate story to audiences across North America. Now, the tour underwent technical rehearsals and initial preview performances at the historic Stanley Theater in Utica, New York, before making its official press launch at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts in Denver, Colorado. Now, designed as an extensive multi-year equity national tour, the production was scheduled to span over 75 weeks and visit more than 60 cities across the United States and Canada. The initial 2024-2025 leg brought the show to premier theatrical venues across the country, including engagements at the Hollywood Pantages Theater in Los Angeles, the Koran Theater in San Francisco, the Paramount Theater in Seattle, the Fisher Theater in Detroit, and the fabulous Fox Theater in St. Louis. But to mount a successful national tour, the production assembled a cast that combined seasoned Broadway royalty with alumni from the original Broadway company. 3-time Tony nominee Carolee Carmello originated the role of Kimberly for the national tour, bringing her vast vocal capability and dramatic range to the challenging lead role. Now, later in the run, theater legend Ann Morrison, famed for originating the role of Mary Flynn in Stephen Sondheim's original 1981 production of Merrily We Roll Along, took over the title role of Kim. Miguel Gill, who served as an understudy in the original Broadway company at the Booth Theater, stepped up to lead the tour as Seth. Now, additionally, original Broadway cast member and Tony nominee Justin Cooley reprised his star-making role for select, high-profile guest engagements along the tour route. The principal adult lineup was anchored by Emily Koch from Wicked and Waitress as the scheming Aunt Deborah, Dana Steingold from Beetlejuice, and Laura, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, Wysaz, sharing duties as Kimberly's mother, Patty, along with Jim Hogan as her well-meaning but troubled father, Buddy. Now, a central challenge of touring a show built on character-driven intimacy is translating its subtle emotional beats to large, multi-thousand-seat touring houses without losing its core charm. The tour maintained the vision of the original Broadway creative team, with direction by Tony nominee Jessica Stone and choreography by Danny Mefford. Senior designer David Zinn and the technical team carefully scaled the set pieces, such as the suburban New Jersey house, the ice rink, and the high school library, allowing the production to adapt fluidly to varying proscenium sizes. The lighting and sound design were specifically recalibrated for larger auditoriums to ensure that the quietest, most vulnerable moments of Jadine Tesori's acoustic-driven score and David Abair's delicate book could retain their proximity and emotional resonance. And this is cool. The Australian premiere of Kimberly Akimbo was produced through a major state company partnership between State Theatre Company South Australia and Melbourne Theatre Company in association with Wagner Productions. Now, rather than a commercial replica, this staging in Australia was mounted as a fresh, non-replica production tailored specifically for Australian audiences. So the production opened at Her Majesty's Theatre in Adelaide, running from July 8th to July 19th of last year, before transferring to the Playhouse at Arts Centre Melbourne for an extended season running from July 26th to August 30th. Now, directed by four-time Helpman Award winner Mitchell Butel, the production balanced the show's heightened comic antics with its new raw emotional core. Butel focused on highlighting the story's themes of time, connection, and existential urgency. Led by musical director Kim Perling, the score was performed by live by an 8-piece band. The musical arrangements delivered Janine Tesori's acoustic-driven score with clarity, emphasizing both the tight harmonies of the teenage choir and the intimate solo numbers. The production also brought together a stellar lineup of Australian theatrical talent across generations. The Australian musical theatre icon Marina Pryor starred as Kimberly, tackling the demanding physical, vocal, and emotional balance required to play a 16-year-old girl aging at 4 times the normal rate. In his professional main stage debut, elder conservatorium graduate Darcy Wayne played opposite Pryor as the anagram-obsessed tuba-playing classmate Seth. Casey Donovan, the powerhouse vocalist, brought her signature comedic timing and big belt voice to the role of the brassy ex-con Aunt Deborah. Christine Wellen Brown portrayed Kimberly's pregnant hypochondriac mother Patty, alongside Nathan O'Keefe as her well-meaning but alcoholic-dependent father, Buddy. And the show choir quartet featuring Marty Alex from Hamilton, Jacob Rosario from Dear Evan Hansen, Alana Lanus, and Alicia and Angelus provided high-energy harmonies and grounded the high school backdrop. Now, the official Canadian premiere of Kimberly Akimbo was structured as a prominent regional co-production between two of the country's most respected theatrical institutions, Montreal's Segal Centre for the Performing Arts and Toronto's Mirvish Productions. But rather than sending a standard touring company across the country, this joint venture created a localized, top-tier Canadian production designed specifically for two major cultural hubs. The show launched at the Sylvan Adams Theatre, running from November 23rd to December 21st of last year. This intimate venue provided the close-up atmosphere needed for the show's nuanced humor and delicate emotional moments. Following its Montreal run, the production transferred to Toronto as a cornerstone of the 2025-2026 Off-Mirvish series. It played at the CAA Theatre on Yonge Street from January 15th to February 8th of this year. Now, the production was helmed by Canadian director Robert McQueen, who focused on bringing out the story's inherent warmth, its eccentric humor, and its underlying existential tension. Canadian musical theatre royalty Louise Petrie, a Tony Award nominee who originated the role of Donna Sheridan in Mamma Mia on Broadway, Anne Fontaine in the original Canadian production of Les Mis, starred in the title role. Petrie brought immense vocal authority, comedic precision, and emotional depth to the challenge of playing a 16-year-old girl in a rapidly aging body. The supporting cast was made up of Christine Peace, who starred as the manipulative ex-con Aunt Deborah, delivering high-energy comedic performance in numbers like Better. Tess Benger portrayed Patty, Kimberly's hypochondriac videotaping mother, and Cyrus Lane played Buddy, Kimberly's well-meaning but troubled father struggling with alcoholism and denial. Now, the European and UK premiere of Kimberly Akimbo marks the long-awaited London debut of the Tony Award-winning musical, landing at the prestigious Hampstead Theatre in North London. Now known as a premier launchpad for groundbreaking contemporary plays and innovative musical transfers, the Hampstead Theatre's main stage offers an intimate 325-seat auditorium. Now, this setting aligns directly with the original off-Broadway staging at Atlantic Theatre Company's Linda Gross Theatre, which ensures that British audiences experience the show's delicate, character-driven storytelling without the spatial distance of a massive West End house. Now, the strictly limited season is scheduled to run from August 28th through November 7th of this year, positioning the production as a standout feature of London's autumn theatrical season. Now, composer Jean Tesori frequently expressed a desire to introduce Kimberly Akimbo to London in an intimate off-West End house, rather than launching directly into a large West End venue. So the 325-seat Hampstead space will honor the acoustic and emotional integrity of her score, letting the audience connect deeply with the performers before any potential commercial West End transfer. As the official UK and European premiere, this production will represent a major international milestone for the musical, proving its universal appeal across global audiences while preserving the quirky human-scale magic that defined both its original off-Broadway and Broadway runs. At its core, guys, Kimberly Akimbo isn't really a story about dying. It's a story about choosing how to live. It reminds us that whether we're 16, whether we're 36 or 60, none of us get an endless supply of time, and waiting around for the perfect moment to take your own great adventure is the only real trap. Now, whether you caught Victoria Clark at the Booth Theatre, you saw Carolee Carmello or Anne Morrison out on the national tour, you experienced the regional co-productions across Canada and Australia, or you are looking forward to Maria Friedman taking the stage off West End at the Hampstead Theatre, Kimberly Akimbo proves that human-scale, character-driven musicals still have a very powerful place in modern theater. Until next time, guys, keep listening, keep supporting live theater, I cannot say that enough, and go out and make your own great adventure. Take care.